The next introduction is one that I'm always honored to do. I haven't been able to do it enough in my life. Be hard to say what Michael Lighty means to me. I'm not going to fuss about it because he knows, and I think a lot of people in the room know. He was my boss for many years, and Michael can be a tough boss. There's no doubt about that. But I always felt that I learned from the best, brightest single-payer mind this nation has. I believe our movement would not be where it is today without Michael. And let me give you an example why, in part, and just one example. Many years ago, there was this annoying little man that used to toddle around the Capitol. And many of you will know who I'm talking about just by saying Tim Carpenter's name. He hasn't been mentioned here yet, but Tim passed away from cancer a few years ago. And Tim was always trying to find funding sources, you know, and he was visiting Washington and doing a lot with Progressive Democrats of America. And we never could seem to link Tim with Michael and with some of the other people who needed to be linked with. And Tim was really one of the driving forces between insisting that Bernie Sanders run for president in 2016, long before 2016. And I always, always, always will be grateful for what infinitesimal part my life might have played in bringing Michael together with Tim, because they became very close, and I'm glad for that. I have to believe in some of those late night conversations, the two of you chatted a little about Bernie, I'll bet. Michael sent me his official intro, so I'll also give you that. He retired from CNA and NNU just this year. Since 1991, he's been organizing and advocating for Medicare for all, and he's ready to win, and I know you're going to get fired up by Michael.
That's the kind of introduction you do not want to follow. So thank you, Donna. That was beautiful. You know, Marty, I just got to say, on this labor question, it's not exactly the topic. But let's just talk about for a sec the absurdity of the position, say, of the Biden campaign. Because, you know, we've heard this. It's like he says, he quotes a union person, "We've given up everything, wages, pensions, everything to keep our health benefits. Don't stop us. We want to keep doing it. Please let us give up everything forever." I mean, that's the logic of the argument. Am I wrong? Say, hey, we've been doing it. Let's keep doing it. Great. How's that working out for you? As Donna mentioned, I retired from NNU, and it has been the honor and joy of my life to represent and work with nurses, so thank you, thank you, thank you. And let me tell you what COBRA costs for a great union plan for two people. $30,000 a year. 30,000. Not 20, not 25. And so that's just a reality check, I think, and a very important one. Today, I am so honored to speak on behalf of Democratic Socialists of America. Is there an organization that has done more to invigorate this movement than DSA? No, there is not in the last few years. I think they brought the average age of this conference down by half. And when I said I started this in 1991, it was when we organized a tour of Canadian nurses and doctors to tour the U.S. after Harris Woolford won a special election in Pennsylvania, which kicked off that single-payer moment. Am I right? And so that's why I am, it's not something to be proud of that we've been doing this, for so long, just so you know. And what we, I think, have to address, and we've done some, but we've got to really, really understand our political moment. Because it's amazing. I was talking with Diane Archer. It is literally amazing. First, we won the policy argument. There isn't really a policy argument against Medicare for all. In terms of efficiency, I mean, President Obama, the only way to cover everybody is through single payer. That is generally, I think, a certified policy position. But we have this amazing political problem. And so we have to address it. And it's complex. I mean, think about it for a sec. A poll came out today, or the other day, I think it was just today or yesterday, from CBS, and it said Americans want dramatic shift in healthcare. First of all, 46% believe the current system needs fundamental changes. Fundamental changes. Another 30% believes it needs to be completely rebuilt. I'm not sure what the difference is there. 76%. So you say, well, God, there's like the media's against us. There's all these Democrats running, against it. There's all this stuff every day against it. And still, 70% of Democrats support Medicare for all. Still, a majority support it. And still, 3/4 of the country know the system is fundamentally broken. It needs to be changed. Well, that's something. And as a socialist, I have to quote the capitalists. So I found this quote from Morningstar. Those of you with 401ks may recognize them. And so last month they said, although it's a frequent refrain on the campaign trail, we think Medicare for all or similar policies promising universal coverage are unlikely to see success over the next decade. After analyzing the policy positions of the leading candidates seeking the Democratic presidential nomination, the U.S. Senate landscape in the upcoming election, and the preferences of likely voters on both sides of the aisle, we think investors should consider the probability that a policy similar to Medicare for all will see success to be in the 5 to 10% range at best. So where's the smart money on Wall Street? There is none. All right. Where is the crony capitalist money on Wall Street? So they're behind the private insurance industry. We have to contest with that analysis. Do we believe that the U.S. Senate is primed to support Medicare for all? Those of us who see the Sanders bill, which I helped work on, as less than perfect, must understand that that reflects the politics of the Senate Democratic caucus. Bernie has more supporters in the Senate for Medicare for all than Ted Kennedy had in the last, I think, 20 years of his life. Ron Wyden has to be said here in Portland. I think the timber industry has a lot to do with his success, as I recall, and other corporate interests in Oregon. Ron Wyden, Senator Wyden is the ranking member on finance. Whatever health care bill passes will go through Senate finance. It is really not an exaggeration to say that if Ron Wyden doesn't support Medicare for all, it probably won't go through Senate finance. So the first political question Oregonians need to ask is, how do we get Senator Wyden? That's the political question, right? That's the political question. And now, okay, let's say we get Senator Wyden. Okay, we're at 15. All right, we got a little ways to go. What is it, we have to ask, that is going to overcome that Senate opposition? Secondly, if we look at our natural allies, who are our natural allies? Labor. Is labor consolidated in favor of Medicare for all? No, it's not. Who are other natural allies? Liberals. In fact, it was a liberal who originally proposed this. Are liberals consolidated for Medicare for all? Not yet. We have to ask politically, how do we overcome that? How do we overcome that? And then, if we look at the opposition looks pretty consolidated. I like to call it the Partnership for Future Healthcare Profits. And they're very good at that. And so that's why we have to understand business for Medicare for All is so significant strategically because we are taking it to the opposition. The Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable are huge opponents. That's why it's important strategically for that work. Secondly, if we look at the House, and I am so impressed with the DSA pressure campaign, the nurses campaign, public citizen, all the stuff, the labor campaign, and all of us have done. It's amazing. And I think that has tapped into the 76% of people who want fundamental change or a rebuilt system. We've tapped into that. But can we ask ourselves this question? Is there any member of Congress who believes their reelection depends on their position on Medicare for All? Right? Who are not currently co-sponsors. Right? Does Frank Pallone believe that he will not be reelected if he doesn't support 1384? That's a political problem. That's a political problem. So then we look at the candidates for president. It turns out that a bunch of them 2 years ago supported Medicare for All. Mayor Pete, remember when he was at the People's Summit or around the People's Summit? Kamala Harris, I was there. Do you ever remember when she first spoke on the introduction of Senator Sanders' bill in 2017? We're not getting an ROI. That was her line. We're not getting a return on investment in healthcare. She said it like 5 times. So, nonetheless, co-sponsor. Senator Booker's co-sponsor. Congresswoman Gabbard supported Medicare for All. And, of course, Senator Warren. Now, what's important about that, and we've talked about this in a number of conferences, there are tons of people who would support single payer. Virtually every Democrat in California legislature will vote for single payer as long as there's a Republican governor to veto it. It happened. And then when we had a Democratic governor, oh boy, we can't get that bill on his desk. Whoa, okay, here it is. This is fun. So the truth is that a co-sponsorship, how many of those co-sponsors of 1384 will not vote for the public option? 1, 2, I don't know. So that's the political situation. Say, well, let's make those members of Congress put maximum pressure on the speaker. It doesn't exactly work that way. Those members of Congress are raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for the speaker so they can have committee positions and positions of power. Pay to play. So you look at this landscape and you say, well, what's the history of this? When we had presidents leading the healthcare fight, what happened? Well, we saw when President Obama led the healthcare fight, we won it. And we can say, and God knows I've gone off on the ACA many times. But it has established something very important. And that is the principle of universal health care was codified by that victory. And the expansion of Medicaid has been a huge success in, Jose, saving lives. So let's acknowledge that. But then look at Carter. Look at Clinton. And ask yourselves, what if we elect one of these other Democrats who's just like them? Then what do we do? And here's the difference, and here's the punchline. The only way to overcome congressional opposition is with presidential support. The only way to win this fight and overcome those blocks in the House and Senate, the only chance we have is to elect Bernie Sanders, and that is the most important thing we can do. And there is not, I'm not. And I'm telling you, I am not here to criticize the other candidates. I'm not here to criticize Elizabeth Warren. Here's what I know. Here's what I know. Hey. Clyde? All right, here's what I'm not here. Look, I worked with Elizabeth Warren's office in 2017. I talked to Elizabeth Warren. I have no doubt of her personal sincerity. But I will say this. Other people who know her well have said she will become pragmatic. Other people have said she will do her own health care plan. Okay? And that, whatever that is. But here is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the difference between a champion who has made Medicare for All his signature issue, who has campaigned on it, who's put it on the public radar, and has turned it into a national issue. That's how American politics work. An identified figure, an identified movement puts it on the national agenda. And the most effective way to do that is with a president. That's what I'm talking about, is a champion. A champion, because if a president doesn't champion this, what's going to happen? They have other priorities. They will spend their political capital on that. They have other priorities. So the Speaker of the House will say, that's really too hard, you should do this. And the Majority Leader of the Senate, hey, what can we do? Right? Chuck, whoa, what should I do? So the thing is, we know what Bernie will do. We don't have to ask what your priority is. We don't have to ask, will you take on Congress? He spent his whole career in Congress taking on Congress. And that, I think, is the lesson of history. Every time we have had this moment, from the 1940s to now, it has been a combination of movement and leadership. Strategic leadership with a vision and a constituency of working class people, people of color, who are going to demand fundamental change in this country. And that takes a movement, and it takes a president. And that's why I would argue, again, the most important thing, the single-payer movement, ask yourself how you're going to overcome those political obstacles. And you say, well, there is one person I can count on this issue in American politics. I have no question that Bernie Sanders will champion Medicare for All. Thank you.